what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. Most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Zinder, The Plain Truth, SX, Sleeping Warrior, Oblate Spheroid, Jose, Earth Flattener, and Arwin. Good to have you all.
Good afternoon.
Yo.
Long live Tortuga Earth.
No.
What's up?
We do some housekeeping.
Zinder, are you there?
Yeah, I'm back.
Good to have you. Should we do some housekeeping?
The answers are always the same, though, Nath.
Maybe not.
That's why it's housekeeping.
Not always. Okay, we'll forgo it. Obviously, very not keen at all to do housekeeping. So no, I'm not doing it now. Sod you all.
So, non-inertial frames of reference compared to inertial frames of reference. Did we get a conclusion on that point?
I think I heard inertia is not the same as an inertial reference frame.
It's hard to have a conversation when they won't come on because they're protesting, but we all know why they're protesting. Hashtag no evidence.
Yeah, we got a conclusion. The Earth doesn't spin.
Oh, did they conclude that in the end, or was it just like did the point get lost for some reason?
I'm concluding it. The Earth does not spin. We have no Coriolis effect, and we have neutral buoyancy. So these things indicate we're not spinning, and nothing's ever going to show you any evidence. No one's ever going to show you any evidence of Earth spin, because we're not spinning.
We're not spinning. You can't say we're spinning unless you can prove it.
Yeah, all we get is abstract and obscure effects that they claim that are never demonstrated with a scientific experiment. They're never demonstrated with actual scientific validity, just a just-so story attached with a, I don't know, normally a thought experiment they can explain on the spot. No systematic experimentation, no proof, no scientific evidence. Just so stories.
Lovely stories, but still just so.
Nah, the whole Coriolis thing, it's messed up. It's a total...
It's messed up.
It's psychosis doublethink, and it's unnecessary.
Well, it's necessary because we have planes.
No, but even for the globe model, it doesn't matter. They're just holding on to this stupid old part that has no function. It's an old myth, and they just won't let it go. It's ridiculous.
Well, it does have a function. It's called deception. That's its function.
It's very simple. Just say there is no Coriolis when you shoot things and everything. And yeah, the atmosphere moves with the Earth. Fine. Done. But no, they have to, because the story is still being told. They don't want to let go of the story. It's psychotic.
No evidence of curve, no evidence of rotation, but they all believe it anyway.
Do you want to read Defund NASA's comment? Yeah, Arwin, like you hold to gravity.
No. Not even close.
Listen back to one of the old debates. Yeah, that's nice. Just played on autoplay. And I heard Arwin say, that argument's as weak as my argument for gravity.
Yeah, sometimes I'm in a funny mood.
Arwin, I have
I
heard you
say
this
that kind of
last couple
thing.
days. I heard you this last couple days mentioning something about the displacement of the ether, something like that. What do you mean when you say that?
The rotating of the ether.
Yeah, what do you mean when you say that?
Well, it references to the gyroscope, you know, the laser gyroscope thing.
Oh, okay. So you're taking the stand of is the ether, rotation of the ether. Eh?
Yeah, may possibly even correlate with the star rotation with the globe of the heavens. But yeah, it's no direct linking up yet. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
but
interesting that that's
it's
happening.
still choosing one side pretty much, but it's not necessarily have to be either or, right?
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. There's no direct linking it yet, but it is very interesting that it seems to be happening. Both things. It's very
That's fair
coincident.
enough. Unacceptable.
Mhm. But yeah, you know what? Earlier on, with gravity and everything, yeah, my arguments were kind of weak. But guess what? I've learned a lot. And I basically rememorized everything I learned about physics in high school, just getting it back, retrieving it, looking
So
things up.
when you say you've learnt a lot, what
Yeah.
specifically have you learnt?
Well, I relearned physics pretty much, the
You should
foundation,
have looked at
everything I learned
evidence.
in school, and now with the new insights to basically guard me for traps, like
When you should have learnt
mathematical
evidence.
traps. I know what each thing really is, what it stands for. Like the whole
Owen,
forces opposing forces thing. That's a construct. It's a conceptual thing that works out. It's like a mathematical tool to conceptualize it. It's not literal. It's an oversimplification because the reality is much more complex than that. That's just one example.
When your weaknesses are not in with the science, you understand the science. Your weakness is what you accept as the evidence that proves points. Like most ballers, they don't understand what evidence is. And that's where you fail. You think that there's evidence to support this downwards acceleration and that it's not explained by density or buoyancy.
Yeah, that's your approach. I have another
No,
approach.
that's what you say
There are
against
certain
us.
elements that you can't explain with the functions, density and buoyancy, as you prescribe to them.
But we can though, and we've had this
No,
conversation many times, but you
no.
keep
Let's
saying that we
not go
don't
into
explain it.
that for a fifth time.
Well, you keep saying that we're not explaining it, but we've explained it many times to you, and we always get to the point where you agree that
strawman
your
the shit
views
out of
can't
me
be.
every single time
Why are
on
you
air,
interrupting
off
me?
air, in chat, everywhere.
Why are you
People
interrupting?
know it.
You keep saying that they can't be explained by density and buoyancy, but we have the conversation, and every time we get to the point where you conclude that you can't prove your assertions to be true, it happens every
That's
time.
not what we conclude at all. I just can't scientifically prove gravity, but there are elements out there that don't fit in the density and buoyancy. You know, you do every time I talk about rocks on rocks, you
Like
talk
what?
about the freaking egg. Okay, every
but
time you never answer
we had a whole show on
the
it
question
yesterday.
straight, ever.
We had a whole show on it yesterday, Arwin.
Yeah, I know, and I remember it exactly what happened. So
Yeah, and
so does everyone else.
everything revolved around the word density, and Rumpus wanted to use the word
volumic mass.
Well, that was a word that was introduced by Jimbo at the end.
Yeah,
and whether that's right or not is irrelevant. That may well be right, and I'm okay with it being right. The issue was that the word that we were looking at was neutral buoyancy, didn't mention volumetric density or weight. It mentioned density.
Yeah, that's nice. That's when something is suspended.
But you say that it can't be explained by density and buoyancy.
On another rock, it's not suspended like that. It's not suspended in something. It's not a neutral buoyancy example. So
but
it's a straw man.
I'm picking you up. No, it's not a straw man.
Yeah, it is.
Straw man. You're saying it can't be explained by density.
To another effect that has nothing to do with it, and that does not explain it.
Arwin, you're saying it can't be explained by density and buoyancy. And then when I challenge you on it, you're saying that's a straw man. It isn't. I'm showing you that it can be explained completely by density and buoyancy, and you keep claiming that it's not being explained to you, but we do it every single time, and every single time you conclude that you can't prove it within the scientific method. That is our point.
No,
so it's not us that can't
you're
prove
making
this,
that
Arwin.
shit
It's
up.
you.
Stop fantasizing, dude. That's not how that goes, ever. I never
So
do
what's
it like
the bit
that.
you disagree with?
You just strawman me with other examples that are not alike. It is
No, I'm
not explaining it. It's not the explanation
Right,
for
so,
the setup
Arwin,
I presented.
Arwin, your criticism is that it can't be explained by density and buoyancy.
Yeah.
So if I then bring up an example where density and buoyancy does explain it, that's not straw manning. That's
yeah, it
countering.
is. It is say, oh look, you're asking me to prove this, that it has a relation. So I'm going to point at another situation, say, yeah, look, that's density and buoyancy.
That's called
well,
a counter.
congratulations, you're right. But it's not my example.
But your example is that we can't explain it with density and buoyancy.
Yeah.
That's fallacious. That's not even true. I would argue, Arwin, that's
Wow.
dishonest to say
Explain it then. Explain it.
But if I explain it, you then say I introduce a straw man argument.
Yeah, if you're going to give another example, yeah, then you're strawmanning it.
No, it's called
actually
a counter.
going to describe the functions of density and buoyancy or volumic mass within the exact setup as I presented it to you and explained the phenomena that I described.
Yeah, but it's not the phenomenon.
That and don't give another example.
Let's be clear. Your complaint is that it can't be explained by density and buoyancy. Full stop. Right? We then give density and buoyancy explanations for what your complaint is to debunk it. And then you claim that's a straw man. That's not a straw man.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do.
No, you give another example. Are you demented?
No, Arwin, it's not
Are you
a straw
completely
man.
demented?
It's a counter and a debunk. You don't understand what a straw man argument is.
Yeah, it is deviating to something else that has nothing to do with it, and then saying, "Oh, look."
So your assertion
that explains it. That relates. No, it doesn't.
Your explanation.
It's another example of density and buoyancy. It's not the setup.
Your complaint is that it can't be explained by density and buoyancy. We then explain it with density and buoyancy, and you claim it's a straw man. No, Arwin, it's called the explanation.
Yeah,
and the counter
you need anti-psychosis medication, dude.
Jose, can you pass the popcorn, please?
Arwin, you don't even understand what a counter argument is.
Let me eat some more.
You're not responding to my statement.
I am. I'm debunking.
No, you're giving an example of something else. That's not an explanation of the phenomena. Okay?
Right. No, I'm not explaining the phenomena. I agree with you on the phenomena. I disagree with your assertion that it can't be explained with density and buoyancy.
Whoa, don't stand up, Arwin. Don't stand up. Whoa,
what causes that very specific
It's density.
pressure?
It's very specific density, Arwin. We do this many times, and we always get to the same point.
Density is just volumic mass. It is just the content. What does it have to do?
Yeah, and if we manipulate
that specific pressure phenomena that is in only one direction.
Arwin, the egg, we varied the density of the water around it, and we caused the egg to move.
Yeah, the egg. Yeah. You know what? That's why I chose you for the scarecrow in my picture of to present it. You are such a straw man vomiter. It's unbelievable.
No, your assertion, Arwin, is that we can't explain it with density or buoyancy. So we
I'm not a freaking arse.
We demonstrate it, and then you dismiss it, and then you claim that it's been strawmanned argument.
Strawmanning me. I'm sick of it. I'm
your
sick
assertion
of
that it
it.
can't be explained, and that's not acceptable. It's intellectually dishonest to argue a point that's just been debunked by dismissal.
Can I ask you something about that? I didn't hear the example with the egg because I wasn't there, but you say density and buoyancy explains the weight, just it, right?
No.
Nothing else.
No.
Or
the
what?
word weight doesn't come into it.
All right.
Weight brings
please.
brings with it the maths. And bear in mind that maths is a concept. Weight brings with it the maths that Rumpus needs to be able to argue gravity.
All right, I accept that. But you say density and buoyancy explain alone why we feel a certain pressure towards the ground, right? So when we just do nothing, just standing.
But in this context, I'm addressing only Arwin's complaint that density and buoyancy doesn't address is phenomena.
Okay.
But it does.
No.
So can I ask you something?
Yes, Arwin, it does. It does it absolutely comprehensively, and there is no room for any other forces because you need evidence for a force.
It's
and
not
we always
floating.
conclude
The rock is not
that
suspended in something else.
That you don't have any evidence.
It's not neutral buoyancy. It's resting on another object, and it's not moving.
Neutral buoyancy.
It's no longer subjected.
Arwin, we can prove neutral buoyancy is a thing.
Yeah, well, congratulations for you. The problem is it has nothing to do with my example.
It doesn't require gravity to do it, Arwin.
Yeah, that's nice for you. It has nothing to do with my freaking example,
It
man.
does. It explains your example completely.
Are you freaking idiot?
No, Arwin, I'm debunking your
yeah,
assertion.
Riley, you're a freaking idiot.
I'm
never
debunking
seen
your
you
assertion
this
that
freaking
gravity.
Stupid before.
I'm debunking
Riley.
your assertion that density
You're
and buoyancy.
freaking insane.
Riley, can you ask another question about it? So you say that density and buoyancy, of course, explains that. So if you go higher up, there's less buoyancy, right? Because there's less air around you that would push you down or something like that. Is it true?
In what are you talking about? The egg?
No. If I go high up, like on Mount Everest, for example.
Right. If you go higher up, right, the only thing that matters is its relative buoyancy. So if you change the density of the air, then you will alter the relative buoyancy. That's the science. That's what we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah.
And all you need is the relative buoyancy of the object in question. So if you've got an object and it weighs a gram, and you've got the medium it sits in that's equal to it, then it will be neutrally buoyant. But if the medium changes, but the mass of the object stays the same, then you will get it will force the movement of it'll displace, and it's completely explained by density over buoyancy.
Yeah, because
wrong to say it's not.
Nice for you.
The way I pictured it was like, so the way I pictured it was like, if you have so much air around you, you have a certain weight. I just said weight, but not, of course, not the
you have
one
a certain
George
density
means,
around
but
you.
let's just talk about weight, right? So, and the higher you go, there's less air around you. So I pictured it that you should weigh less, but
You would weigh more because there would be less density of the air that's not there anymore.
Okay, so you weigh more the higher you go?
Relatively speaking, yeah, the desire to fall would be increased because you no longer weigh the same anymore because there's less buoyant air around you. It's got less.
And about how much are we talking? About
Hold
one
on.
in how much?
It
You're
would be
more
relative to the thing.
dense, regardless of if the air gets thinner, you're more dense than it, even at the thickest point. You're not in neutral buoyancy because you're on the ground.
But
You're more dense than the air, aren't you? So at no point, you as a person, you're not in neutral buoyancy just because you're standing on the ground. You're not the same density as the air around you. That's why you pass through.
all right.
Yeah, it's likewise with water. You wouldn't walk on water, you'd sink through it because you are more dense than it.
So you are going to weigh more when you go higher up because there's less air around
You're not
you.
going to weigh more,
hold
no.
on, why are you bringing
What's
in
going to
weight?
happen is the density
Hold
of
on,
the air
Anthony,
around
hold
you
on.
changes.
Hold on. What difference does it make? We're not talking about weight. We're talking about
No, I'm
density.
just trying to understand.
So the weight is irrelevant. It's purely down to the density.
Oh, the weight is irrelevant?
No, the weight's not relevant at all. Because the minute you say weight, then that's how you can introduce this fiction called gravity. But
That's why that you use it constantly.
Yeah, that's why you use it, to introduce the gravity. But it doesn't exist.
That's why
I'm
you
not trying to
use it.
No, we don't use weight.
Yeah, you used it twice in the last 2 minutes. Yeah, you
No,
did.
we don't use the word weight, Arwin. You're mistaken.
Hold on, let
we
me
don't.
let me
Well,
give an
you
example.
just used
Hold
it.
on,
No,
hold
we
on.
can
Sorry,
trust
guys.
it.
Sorry, just break this up a
Congratulations.
second.
Were you not paying attention in yesterday's show, Arwin?
Hold on. So I've got a kilogram cork, a massive cork, and I drop it through the air. It hurtles through the air and then hits water and stops. Then I drop a kilogram of something completely different that's more dense than a kilogram of cork, and it will go through the water rather than stopping on the water, purely down to its density.
Hooray.
What do you mean, hooray?
Sod all to do with its weight.
Why are you saying hooray, Arwin? You said
You're
your
still using.
your complaint,
You're gonna
Arwin,
use
is that it
terminology
can't
to
be
weight,
explained
then
by
you're
density
involving
over.
other. Oh yeah.
Your complaint
Ask
is
me
that,
a question and then just rump us over.
No. Your complaint is that it can't be explained with density and buoyancy. So we explain it with density and buoyancy, and then you claim strawman.
Explain something else.
Pardon?
Pardon?
Say that again,
explain
please.
something else. You didn't
No.
explain the setup
We're explaining
that I gave you.
buoyancy, Arwin.
Yeah,
We're explaining
yeah,
it away with
you
density
gave
and
another
buoyancy.
example again. Not my setup.
What's your
Explain
setup, Arwin?
density
Hold
buoyancy
on,
with my
Anthony.
setup.
Let's
Two
hear your-
rocks on each other.
Yeah.
Sit.
So both rocks are in
Pressure
a
of
state
the first rock on top of the other one causes the structure of the rock underneath it to crumble somewhat under pressure, right where it's resting on it. So explain that with density and buoyancy.
All right. Now, if I do this, will you not interrupt me while I do it?
Absolutely. If you're actually going to do it and not yet give another example like you have for the last 2 days.
So you will interrupt me then?
Under that condition, yes,
So
definitely.
there will be no point in me trying to explain it to you.
If
because
you're going to
refuse
explain
listen.
something else, absolutely.
No, because you refuse to listen, Arwin.
Yeah, I refuse to listen to your examples of other things and not my freaking setup.
But we dealt with it yesterday completely,
No, we
Arwin.
didn't.
And this point was
You
concluded.
haven't, and you still don't.
No, we dealt with it yesterday and it was concluded. It finished. Okay, let me do it again.
Other examples of
Let me do it
freaking
again.
helium
Are you
balloons
listening?
hitting ceilings
Arwin, shut
and
your
your
mouth.
freaking egg.
Arwin, shut your mouth and open your ears. We have the rocks. One rock's on top of the other rock. Agreed?
Yeah.
And they're both in the medium of air. Agreed?
Yeah.
So both rocks are more dense than the air that they're in. Agreed?
They have higher volumic mass, yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes, of higher
Right.
volumic mass.
So we
yes.
have one rock on top of another rock, both rocks of which are in a different, in a more dense environment than the air that they're in, because they're both more dense.
No,
yeah.
other way around, but I get
So your question was, how do you measure the pressure of the rock on top to the rock on the bottom? We lift the rock,
with density.
put a weight up. We lift the rock, put some scales under it, put it back on. There's your answer. Density.
Fuck, dude, that is the exact example that I gave you.
But the explanation is density, not gravity.
No, that where? How does that fit in there? You use weight.
No, I didn't mention weight
No,
once.
that's how you weigh it, yeah.
No, didn't mention weight
But
once.
no, but you
Listen,
can't
we'll do
use
it again.
that.
We'll do it again.
You just claimed you can't use it, and you're using it.
No, you
It's not
misheard.
tied in. Where's it tied in with the actual system of density and buoyancy? Come on, Riley.
We'll try it again because you didn't listen.
Oh, I didn't listen. I didn't listen, did I?
You're doing it again.
Yeah, I did. I did listen. I
You
heard you
didn't.
perfectly.
Well, all right. Let's say you did listen. You didn't understand
I
it.
did.
Let's do it again. Both the rocks are in air. That's the medium that they're in. And they are both more dense than the air. Correct?
Right.
So the density of both the rocks displaces the air that they're in because they are more dense.
No.
You say
No,
it's to
they're
do
not.
with gravity.
They're stationary.
Pardon?
They're stationary.
Yeah.
They're resting. They're not displacing air anymore.
Yeah, they're stationary. There's a barrier underneath them.
Yeah, that's right.
Nathan
It's not
described it as
displacing air
resistance.
anymore. The air is not moving
Yeah.
because it is stationary.
Right. So Nathan
Not
described that as
displacing.
resistance yesterday. Do you remember?
There is no displacement.
I asked you a question.
There is no displacement taking
Hang on.
place.
I asked you a
of the
question. You need to go through this, Arwin, so you get it. Nathan described it as a resistance. Do you remember yesterday?
air. Resistance?
Yeah. And Rumpus said, no, it was a force. It was a force that was pushing back up. Do you remember?
That's a discussion between you guys. I didn't keep track of that all because it was insane.
Okay.
And he
So
went
we-
all into the theoretics, and I don't
All
agree
right.
to that. It's not necessary. I'm not doing that right now.
Okay.
I'm doing it in your way, and you keep deflecting.
I'm trying to get a word out, Arwin. So we've got both the rocks and they're both in the medium of air. Both the rocks are more dense than the air. Okay. Your criticism is that density and buoyancy don't explain this. Is that correct?
It doesn't explain the specific pressure that the first rock on top of the other rock is going to cause locally where it's touching the other rock.
It
Yeah.
does.
No, it
Because
doesn't.
the rock on top is in the medium of air. And the rock itself, its own density is greater than the density of the air that it's in. So the downward acceleration force is caused by the mass of the object that's being put on top of the other rock. If it was gravity, then you wouldn't. If it was gravity, you wouldn't be able to prove it because you would need to do what gravity tells you, which is whichever one you're going to bend space-time or get another planet and put it above it.
No, you don't have
But
to
what we
that
can
at
do-
all. I don't.
What we can do is alter the density of the environment that the rock at the top sits in, and we can make that rock move just by changing the density.
Yeah, that's right. You can take away its resting point, but yeah, currently it's still sitting in air.
Still sitting in
And
air,
yeah,
but if we
but there's no motion taking place. It's already
because
found
it's
its
sat in
rest.
air.
So how does actual buoyant effects take place in its stationary setting? There's no
You
displacement.
have to change the air. You have to
So
make
what's causing that specific pressure?
its density of the rock,
Exerting on the other rock.
its own density. That's what's causing it.
How really? So you ascribe to Newtonian gravity then?
No, I didn't say anything about gravity. I said its own density.
That's exactly what Newtonian gravity is supposed to
No,
do.
it
It says, the density, the mass causes some kind of force. In this case,
Sorry to
crushing,
interrupt.
pushing.
Sorry to
So
interrupt. Sorry, Owen. If you want to know what a straw man is, this is that.
Yeah, I didn't mention Newtonian gravity.
Riley,
You
can
did
I?
actually mention it, but
Pardon? Hang on, so we'll just
Yeah,
wait a second. What
Yeah.
did you say?
So can I show you a video and ask you if this is explained by density and buoyancy?
Absolutely.
This vacuum thing in the vacuum chamber, the feather and the magnet dropping at the same time.
Yeah, so what we're going to say there is that the relative density of the magnet is not
Yeah.
altered enough by changing the medium from air to vacuum. You're not going to notice
there is
any
no
difference.
medium.
So
you achieve
the-
neutral buoyancy when you are equal to the medium. So what you're saying is, let's remove the medium. Well, why?
I was just going to ask if it does explain it or not.
No, it doesn't explain it.
Sorry,
Okay.
We're in air.
Alright.
Sorry, I'm asking a question. Why would you show us in a vacuum? When is that ever experienced by anybody ever?
In this case, it's experienced by this chamber.
Yeah, in
Well,
But you
real
can
world,
do it by
sorry,
yourself, by the way.
in the real
Just saying.
world, other than in this parlor trick, where does that ever come into factor in real life? Ever?
If you build a vacuum chamber, it comes in real life.
I'll say it
life.
again.
His point's
Other
valid.
than
His point-
in the parlor trick, when does this occur in the real world ever? Other than the parlor trick that you have created.
to be fair,
On Earth, never.
Nathan, to be fair, you
So
are being harsh.
when we're
He's
talking
bringing a
about
fair point up.
buoyancy and density, we're talking about relative states in a medium. So by removing the medium, what does that prove when we're talking about density? Nothing. Everything's more dense than nothing. Because
I
there's no
didn't want to
medium.
prove anything. I just wanted to ask if it explains this too, and I
Explains-
wanted to know
explains what?
why it
You're
explains it
removing-
and how it explains it.
Right,
The
part
answer
of
is no.
density and buoyancy.
The answer is no.
Part of density and buoyancy is about the medium that you're in, and you're removing the medium. So what use is that when we're talking about relative states and the mediums they are in? I.e. atmosphere. When you drop something through atmosphere, if I drop a feather, it's more affected by the medium than a bowling ball. But if you remove the medium, then they're not affected by a medium anymore. You don't have a medium. You've got nothing. A vacuum.
So why does it fall? I don't understand.
Because it's the feather's got a density, and we'll call the value 2. the air-
Density does it.
The
okay.
air that was in the chamber will give that a value of 1. So
Yeah.
the feather will fall. But by removing the air, you've just left the stuff that's in the vacuum now, that's basically now a 0, but you've still got the feather, which is still got a value of 2. So
Okay,
it still falls.
So each, let's say each gram of density, I just call it grams, just to
That's a
make my
weight
point.
measurement.
Each
What, give
gram
it-
of density
Why? That's a weight measurement,
has its
isn't it?
own
The weight. Sorry,
velocity
stop.
towards
I've got to
the
stop
ground.
you. No, you don't give it an attribution. You don't attribute a weight value to it. So if I've got
Okay.
a kilogram of cork and I've got a kilogram of lead, one drops, and when it reaches a different medium, the one that you're trying to remove in a vacuum chamber, i.e. no longer the medium air, but the medium water, one, which was formerly travelling through the thinner air, stops at the water, the cork. The other carries on going because of its density. Sod
Can
all
I
to do
ask
with
a-
its sod all to do with its kilogram attribute. The attribute. Sod all to its weight.
Can I ask
That
you this
sounds
another
really-
way, Riley? Wait, please. So each millimeter or each cubic millimeter of, let's say, gold has its own velocity
Density.
towards the ground.
Yeah, it has its own
And it's
density.
stationary.
So
It's always
mass,
the same.
mass per volume, you mean? So the density.
Gold has its own density.
Yeah, so gold always has the
mass per
same
unit
density,
volume.
plus minus.
So the density. You just don't seem to want to use that word. You've used the mathematical description of it instead of the actual word. Again, being a bit tricky, like you were on the last show when you left out the word rotation. You're now saying mass per unit volume. What would be another way of? What would be another way of saying?
You're creating a straw man.
What would be what? Why are you interrupting me?
Because you interrupted me all the time before?
Yeah,
maybe?
so I'm asking a question. Why would you not just say the word density?
I said density.
No,
You
you
didn't.
said
I
mass.
just explained density.
You said if I have gold, should I edit this together to show how tricky and slippery you are? Because you're very tricky and slippery. I'm still talking. I'm still talking.
You said weight.
I'm still talking. You said if I have a certain amount of gold, and then you gave it per unit of measurement. You didn't say its density.
How can I describe how much gold I have with density? How should I say it? Like
Greater than and less than.
Mass
Yeah,
per
but I
unit
want to say a
volume. That's
specific
what you did.
number,
Mass
please.
per unit volume.
You can say a specific number. You can say a specific number if you want to quantify
Yeah,
it. I've done that too.
the next thing I said after you said weight is not allowed, I said a cubic millimeter of gold. And what's wrong with this description?
You can call it anything you want, but if you're going to use the word weight, then all that happens is mathematically they introduce something called gravity. But
Yeah, and I don't use weight.
Hang on. The context of the conversation is relative to density over buoyancy. So we should be talking in units of density and buoyancy.
All right.
So in other words, not putting grams or kilograms, putting the like density. So you can have something that's more dense or less dense. So you've got a feather and you've got a vacuum. We'll say the feather is more dense than the vacuum. That's it.
All right. So
I'm staring at Anthony Riley. They've got water vapor in them that are more dense than the area around them. So how come they don't just fall out if it's just your simple explanation?
Can't hear what you're saying because you're too quiet.
Your explanation?
You're too quiet. Can you speak up again and ask the question again?
So what about the clouds I'm looking at?
What about the clouds?
I'm looking at clouds that have water vapor in them. The water vapor is denser than the surrounding air, so it should be raining right now.
Well,
But
if
it's
it was
not.
more dense than it would be raining. But it's obviously not being more dense, or there's another thing like a thermal that's holding it up.
Well, water vapor is definitely denser than air.
Yeah, but there's other variables in the weather, like convection currents that do go up. Winds go up. So there are other things that affect clouds that are not. You can't isolate all the variables with clouds. But your point is that cloud.
Yeah, I would argue that
I don't know how to
debunk
answer
y'all.
that because there's too many
explanation.
with weather. Right,
Okay.
let me go back to our friend here. You said about the feather and the vacuum, and you said you wanted to call it grams or kilograms, and I said not really because we should be talking in density over buoyancy. Because your question was, can this be explained with density and buoyancy? And the answer is yes, it can. The feather is more dense than the vacuum that is there. The feather we can give a value of 2. The vacuum we can give a value of 0. So the feather's naturally going to displace to the bottom of it because it's heavier than the environment it's in. Dense.
yeah.
That is the answer. But
Okay,
it's too simple. You want it to be more complicated.
No. I just wanted to know the answer.
So Nathan, just present my screen to the audience, and if you could click on my link in my thumbnail in the
Yeah, I
Hangout.
see it.
All right, so this is an experiment, and I'm aware about the copyrights thing, so I'm only going to show you screenshots. But basically, this guy's got he's got rubbing alcohol as the medium, and he's got olive oil as the subject. So what he's going to show here is that when he pours the rubbing alcohol into the jug, into the cup, it's only got rubbing alcohol in it. So when he gets a teat pipette and he drops some drops into it, you can see that a little bit further in. I need to go a little bit further. You can see that he drops in the olive oil, and we can tell because it's gone below. We can tell that the olive oil drops are more dense than the rubbing alcohol. Are you with me at this point?
Yeah.
So then what he does is he puts it side on and he gets the light right so you can see it, and we can see the beads of olive oil at the bottom. But now what he wants to do is he wants to show that if he fills the bottom of this container up with more density, he can force these little marbles of olive oil to rise. And then we could then say that these would then be neutrally buoyant because they're in a state of suspension, like the egg with the water.
Yeah.
So what he does is he gets he pours it down the side of the glass so that it goes straight down the water and it doesn't splash. And what that allows him to do is fill it up from the bottom first. So what he's doing at this point is he's all this the heavier liquids coming down the side, and it's going to form and pool underneath this, and it will push these things up. So bear this in mind, Darwin, when you say that it's always down, because it's not. This is what this guy is now doing, is showing that it's not. This is going to make these things move up by changing the density of the environment that they're in. So they're beginning to go up now, and he gets to this point where now, once this, you can see now that the bigger globules are towards the bottom, and the smaller ones are beginning to rise because the smaller ones have got a less dense position than the bigger ones that have got more dense. So they're beginning to get a little bit higher. But the thing that he's poured down here sits along the bottom here because he's only poured enough in to lift them off the bottom. So if gravity really is a thing, then where's the downward acceleration force? Yet we've just manipulated the medium in which these beads are sat in. We've increased the density underneath them, which has forced them to rise up. That's called buoyancy, right?
Force.
But when Arwin
I don't know. Yeah, well, I can.
Hang on, but when Arwin says,
different way, it's very easy.
Hang on, when Arwin says that there are things that can't be explained by density and buoyancy, and we've just done a demonstration of it, which he's now going to call a straw man, I'm going to say this can't be explained by gravity.
It can. Yeah, it can.
Could.
Pressure. That's what actually.
We haven't changed.
That's why gravity is incorporated in the actual density and buoyancy formula. It's pressure. The material surrounding it gains a higher density or volumic mass, so it exerts more pressure, forcing that with less volumic mass.
We didn't change the pressure, though.
By the pressure caused by the force that is constantly over it.
We didn't change the pressure.
Yeah, that's look it up. You can actually find the formulas.
No, we're not looking it up. We didn't change the pressure. The only thing that we changed was we added pressure. We added a layer underneath.
I'm not talking about that kind of air pressure. The pressure didn't increase in the glass.
Correct.
I'm not talking about container pressure. I'm talking about material pressure.
But I'm dealing with 2 points here. One is to demonstrate density and buoyancy, and that's what I've done. The second point The second point is to debunk your assertion that this can't be explained by density and buoyancy.
I never claimed this can't be explained by density and buoyancy.
But the third point is there is no gravity in this, because if there was a gravity in it, it's either a control, because it wasn't manipulated, or not evident. But
I just explained it to you how that would work.
Yeah, you call pressure, but we didn't have pressure as a variable. We had, if it was there, when it was a control.
Yeah, that's right. Density and buoyancy don't standard require it in the modeling of it. But when you look back to the official formula, yeah, there it is.
So pressure wasn't a cause because we didn't manipulate it. It was a control, right? Or not present at all.
You're talking about a scientific experiment all of a sudden?
We're talking about causing the movement upwards, which you claim can't be explained by density and buoyancy.
I never claimed that about this setup.
Not about this setup, but you say that there are...
Yeah, then why are you using it for this?
To illustrate that everything can be explained with density and buoyancy. And
yeah, but this is not my example for the 100th time, you
Right, but we've got a bubble, and we've got another bubble that might be touching it, for example, which would be like your rock. Now, we've been through...
we're going to imagine it's alike, really. Really?
Well, we've been through
different materials, different densities.
Your rocks are both in the medium of air. Both rocks are more dense than the air.
Yeah, good for you.
That's it.
It's kind of alike. You just have to imagine that it's the same. No, this is not my setup.
We don't have to imagine it, are we?
This is not my setup.
All we have to do is explain it with density and buoyancy, and then point out that there are no holes.
Good for you. This is not my setup. This does not explain my setup.
So can you give me an example where you think that density and buoyancy can't explain something?
Yeah.
Go on then.
One rock.
Right, I've just explained how it
on another. No, you didn't. No,
yeah, I did.
Have an example of something else. It's called
both the rocks are in the
very good at it. Very fluid.
No, Arwin, both the rocks are in the medium of air, and they are both.
It has nothing to do with the medium. They are stationary. They are no longer moving.
You're right. They're being supported by
equilibrium. There is no more pressure being exerted on the material surrounding it because it's now stationary. It's at rest.
It's at rest, yeah, but there's a barrier stopping it from moving, right? We had this yesterday with Rumpus. So both the
Right.
rocks are in the medium of air, and they are both more dense than the air. So they're both going to go down because of the displacement. They're in a state of not neutral buoyancy. It's going to be negative or positive buoyancy, whichever way it goes, up or down, whichever.
What? They're
Yeah,
not
there's three
buoyant.
types of-
They're not floating. They are at rest.
They are at rest. They're being
No.
restrained by the floor.
Right?
So we know that they are more dense than the air that they're in. And we know that the floor is stopping them from moving any further. How is that not explained totally by the density of the rock themselves?
Yeah, that's very nice to explain their position, but that doesn't explain the pressure.
It does. The
No,
rock's
it
got
doesn't.
density.
No.
Yeah, the rock's got density, Arwin, and it's in a medium that's very light. It's got a big contrast to the rock itself. So the pressure is caused by the rock's own density in the medium it's in.
That doesn't make any sense because it's
No,
stationary.
no. It does. You're just not listening. The pressure is
Sitting.
caused by
the barrier
the
against the other solid, which is much denser. It's already there.
Right.
Yet there's still pressure.
end of it. So it doesn't need any more explanation. You've just said it yourself. It's more denser. That's it. That's the cause. Its own density.
It's sitting. I was talking about the rock it was sitting on. It's already stationary, sitting against that. Yet at that very point, there is pressure
So you're on about
being
the lower,
exerted. Yet it is stationary. It's no longer moving. Doesn't
You're on-
fall
so
into
you're
the
on about the lower
category
rock.
of buoyancy.
So just clarify. You're talking about the lower rock or the higher rock?
I was in my last statement. I was referring to the rock underneath it.
The
Can
rock
I ask a
underneath it.
question?
No, not yet.
Sure.
So the rock underneath it, Arwin, is receiving the pressure of the rock above it, and you're saying that
That's right.
pressure isn't explained by density or buoyancy.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So the rock above it that's giving the pressure has its density, right? And it's more dense than the air that it sits in. End of explanation. That's it. No gravity is required.
It
No
doesn't
pressure.
explain it at all. It's stationary.
Can I
Doesn't
ask
matter.
a
It
question?
has a
Where's the
density.
pressure coming from?
It's density.
Can I ask
I
a
want to hear
question?
the plain truth. Yeah.
So
go
what
ahead,
if you
friend.
set something next to it? Is it gonna exert
Hold on,
pressure
Erwin.
on
Let,
that
let plain
because of
truth
its
ask the question.
density?
Density and buoyancy is an up and down movement, isn't it? It's not a lateral movement.
No, it's relative according to your
It
principle.
is relative, but it's a relative.
Yeah.
What you call a downward acceleration force is actually density.
No.
Okay,
it's the
so
cause
yesterday
of
we
the-
had a
it's
guest.
the cause of the buoyant effect and the alignment. That's what it is.
That makes absolutely no sense. It's
Yeah,
the
it does. It
cause
doesn't make
of-
sense to you because you're demanding. You've apparently regressed
Say it again. It's the cause of what?
of the buoyancy effect, the separation of layers, the
So
alignment.
you're saying the
It's
density
a
is the
force. And
cause
other
of the
forces
buoyancy.
apply, the alignment shifts because it's caused
Hang on,
by
just
a
let me
force.
clarify. You're saying that the density is the cause of the buoyancy. What?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Say it again then.
Gravity, force applied to matter, all of it causes the buoyant effect.
But this is where you said. Then I say, can you prove the gravity? Right?
Okay, can I jump in, please?
Force, just
not
force.
yet.
and
Wait, just wait,
force.
please wait.
Motion also does it. I have explained this many times.
Yeah, you've explained it, but I'm
Examples?
asking you to prove it. I'm asking you.
Yeah,
to
I've shown you examples with the car. That's all over the place. It's a basic enough explanation.
explanation. is
alignment
not
shifts.
Explanation is not proof.
Right. Can I ask you one
You man.
only
No,
one
let me
question?
let me jump in real quick,
Just
please.
one.
Hang on.
Let
If you jump in now, you are going to hijack the point. So we either need to finish
No,
this point.
no, you've done that plenty. I'm done with you, man. I'm done. With
Right.
you.
So you've got to drop your point then.
No, I'm not gonna freaking drop anything.
So you've got to prove it. Can you prove your gravity claim?
Yeah.
How?
The pressure from one rock on the other.
But we've just explained.
No, you
the
haven't.
Cause
You
in the
claim it.
pressure.
You haven't.
We've just explained.
No, you haven't. You just
Stop
insert something that's not actually
Stop
within the
interrupting.
concept of density and buoyancy.
It
You
is,
just
because-
insert it in there. Say, oh yeah, this is part of it. No,
No, it is.
find me the freaking quotation.
Arwin. I'm
Find
explaining
it.
to you
I'm
very
sick of
simply.
you. I'm sick of
rock-
you.
The rock has its own density, and we know that the air
That's
it's in
not
is.
within the concept.
It
has
is. That's
nothing to do
exactly
with
within
the buoyancy
concept. I'm
effect.
using the word density because we know that
Doesn't
rocks have density.
Explain local pressure from stationary
Yes, it
objects.
does. It's
No,
got
it doesn't.
Causes the
Find the quotation for me then. Shut up in the
You want
meantime.
a citation of
Find the
what?
quotation and shut up.
Okay, so what rock? Should we call it granite? Should we call the
Density
rock?
buoyancy concept. No freaking video. Density buoyancy concept. Explain
Well,
the
look at the
pressure from a stationary solid object onto another stationary solid object.
Right,
Go
okay,
ahead.
so here we go, Arwin. We've got the density of air has a value of 1.225 kilograms per meter. Is it meter squared?
Ooh,
Meter
it
squared, yeah.
works. Oh,
And then we
It's
have
like
wait.
cubic meter.
That's hilarious.
And then we have the density of granite, which is 2.75 grams per centimeter cubed. So one is bigger than the other. That's your explanation for why one rock's creating a pressure on top of the other rock, all within density. No requirement for anything more. But if you're going to claim there's more, I want to see proof.
Riley, can I ask you just
Density of granite.
one thing?
This is what does
You're gonna
this have
claim
to?
it's
This is
gravity.
just general stuff.
No, this is called
not-
density.
no, this is not the density and buoyancy formula. This is not the concept. Bring the actual concept.
We have
Actually incorporates density and buoyancy officially.
So we have the density of air at one value. It's
No,
a
you're
small
giving an
number.
example, not an example of things. The actual formula.
The actual
The formula. The actual thing.
No,
The actual
Arwin.
official system.
Arwin,
Get it. Get
it's
it.
the relative.
No more examples.
Arwin,
Get
it's the
the
relative.
freaking formula.
Arwin, it's the
Sick of
relative
you.
density of the two
Arwin,
materials.
shut up, bro.
You.
Plain
Get
truth.
the
I want to hear
formula.
you.
No, not formula. It's relative densities, Arwin. One number's
Whoa,
bigger
let
than
me
the
stand
other.
right here.
Piss
He's
off.
standing up. Oh, he's getting closer to you. Sleeping. Oh, go away. Okay, Arwin. All right, sit down. Chill. All right, playing through. Go ahead.
Done with this shit.
Okay, so yesterday we had our guest come in who was the engineer, and he was discussing how he takes into account gravity when he builds a bridge. I believe he was saying building a bridge, right? And we said, okay, now build that bridge without gravity and taking into account. So my question to Arwin is, okay, just take gravity out of your equation right now. What would
No.
happen to those two rocks? What would happen to those two rocks without gravity?
They would just rest on each other. Nothing would happen because they
Okay.
would be at their equilibrium.
Okay.
Because weight is not incorporated in the density and buoyancy concept, as you guys constantly speak out and complain to other people about when they use the terminology. Oh, yeah, but you do it yourselves constantly and just randomly insert factoids out of nowhere into a formula, and yet
Okay,
you refuse
listen.
to actually bring the formula forth and just give
All right,
examples and more
listen,
strong.
Arwin, your nemesis is gone, so you don't have to talk to us
I
like
just
he's
have
here.
to. No, I just want to say, speak it out.
For the record, Arwin kicked Sleeping Warrior, so
Yeah, I know.
that's fine. I'm just saying. But what I wanted to say earlier about someone said that water is heavier than air in clouds. I'd like to read something. A glass of water weighs more than a glass filled only with air, but humidity is water vapor, not liquid water, and water vapor molecules are lighter than the molecules of nitrogen and oxygen that make up approximately 99% of the atmosphere.
Right.
So air is heavier than water vapor. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Well, guys, Arwin is gone. I just realized he booted Sleeping Warrior, so I booted him. If somebody want to boot me, this became just a shit show. So let's finish this right. Let's finish this call. I don't know, talk about among yourselves, guys. I'll go on mute.
I get it, Jose. I was thinking about it, but I thought this is between them. So
Yeah, no, I'll do it.
they're both flat earthers, so I'm not gonna kick either
I
of
know.
them.
I just
I don't
kick them.
believe in it.
I send them to the same room. They can punch each other over there now. I tried to avoid it. I stood in between them. Arwin standing up. Arwin was aggravated. So now we lock them in the same room. Now they can talk and do whatever they want over there.
Can I ask you something about, maybe someone can answer who's still here, about this example with the gold in a vacuum chamber? So if you let it fall, let's say a cubic meter of gold. No, it's too much. Cubic millimeter of gold. You let it fall, and it will always fall at the same speed, no matter what. in a vacuum chamber. Do you agree with that?
Well, how large is your vacuum chamber? How much distance do you need to have an acceleration?
It always accelerates no matter what.
Okay,
you can have like 1 meter, let's say, or 3 feet, I guess. Yeah, 3 feet.
Yeah. Okay.
Height. Okay. So it will always fall at the same speed and accelerate at the same speed, right? So it has an acceleration.
Okay.
And then if I want to disprove gravity, the only thing I have to do, because gravity claims that the gravitational pull of the Earth is different on some parts of the Earth, would be to take this vacuum chamber and place it at the region where gravity is higher and see if the objects fall at the same speed or not as at the other part of the world. That would be the only thing I would have to do to disprove gravity. Can you agree with that, or do you disagree?
Well, that makes sense what you're saying. Have fun.
All right. So I would have to find, because I don't think there are some experiments about this on the internet, but I have to look. So I would have to do it by myself, I guess, which would be kind of complicated, but it would be possible.
It just sounds like another Cavendish experiment to me, where you're trying to prove something that is not going to be provable. You're going to have.
Are you sure it wouldn't be provable?
Well, I'm going on the fact that this world is not spinning and it's not a globe, so
Yeah,
gravity is.
My point is to disprove gravity. The point of Cavendish experiment was okay. I didn't even know the point of the Cavendish experiment, but people say it proves gravity. But my point is to disprove gravity, because Nathan always say people are assuming sphere Earth, so I'm assuming the flat Earth from the beginning and see if I can disprove the things I was told.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah. Let's see. Maybe in the next 5 years I can do it.
Yeah. What you're going to be doing, though, in my mind, is simply all you're going to be doing is extrapolating out the theory of gravity, and postulating the same thing that we've talked about. That if you were to take an ounce of gold and go to where there's
better not gold, dude. I'm not that rich.
Huh?
I'm not that rich.
No. What I meant is
iron. That's like iron. It's better.
What I meant is that if you go to a certain location on Earth where that gold will weigh less because of the less of the centrifugal force, then you go someplace else. That's the same idea. All you're doing is turning it on its head.
But to make this experiment easier, I would have to take a scale instead of the vacuum chamber and go to sea level, where the air pressure is always the same. So I would have to measure the air pressure, go from, let's say, from almost North Pole to the equator and do this again. And then I would see, okay, gravity would explain that, but buoyancy and density wouldn't explain that, or it's the same, and I would say, all right, gravity is wrong because I get the exact same measurement. So I don't see a problem with that experiment.
Except for time and money.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, if I would go anyway to, let's say, Egypt, which is not exactly on the equator, of course, it's more north, but the weight would still vary on a globe Earth. You know? So, and I live pretty far in the north, so I would have to take the distance and measure it, and then see if this measurement corresponds with the theory of gravity. or not. It's not even that hard, you know. The most expensive things would be a scale that is precise enough for that, and then the flight, of course. But if I would go there anyway, into the south, then I just would have to take the scale with me.
Is this a scientific theory?
Yeah.
Scientific theory of gravity we've got now. So this has been established by a series of experiments establishing cause and effect to develop a scientific theory. Is that what we've got? I'll give you a hint. No, it's not what we've got. This isn't scientific theory.
I'm not assuming that gravity exists. I just want to disprove it or prove it by this thing I just said before.
What you said you'd got a theory.
I just said I just said I want to disprove the gravitational theory or want to prove it for myself.
Oh well, there's no need. This isn't science. This is just pseudoscience bullshit, made up mathematics only. You know, the way you would establish gravity is a...
Yeah.
Oh right, my bad. I didn't think I left you long enough gap for you to assert your nonsense and talk about pseudoscience. This is not a theory in science.
Well, it's pretty irrelevant because like 99% of the human race believes in gravity. So it's
what?
pretty relevant to try to disprove or to try to prove for myself. Wouldn't you agree with that?
That's an appeal to consensus. That's an appeal to consensus.
Yeah, but I just told you the reason why I would do that. Because more than almost or more than 99% of the human race believes that. So someone has to be wrong. I'm not trying to prove my point with that. I'm just explaining why I would do that.
What's the point in doing it? What's the point in doing it then?
To prove for myself if gravity exists or not.
Just said I'm not trying to prove my point, then I'm going to go and prove it. So
the point with the 99% is not to how should I say it? The thing I said about the 99% is not proving that gravity exists or not. It's just for me, because 99% of the people believe in gravity, it's a reason for me to prove it for myself or not. You know?
You've already established
it's pretty relevant.
It's a belief that 99% of people have. So if 99% of people are Christians, does that make the belief in any way real? No, it's got no scientific validity.
It doesn't. Hello? I can't hear you anymore.
Well, this is supposed to be our world, and should it not have scientific validity already? If 99% of people believe it, why would you as a layman need to go out and do anything? Should it not have science already?
Well, if I don't believe in what they say...
We're not talking about beliefs. You're getting confused again.
I want to prove it for myself.
That's why I'm interrupting. We're not talking about beliefs. We're talking about reality. That's why I don't care what 99% of people believe. Yeah?
I don't care either, because
you
I want to prove it for myself.
Right. Well, why isn't it already proven? Why don't we already have science for it?
I can't validate if the science is true or not, because those are things I can do for myself. But I found something I could test for myself. So if the difference in... I'm sorry that I use this word, but if the difference in weight is there, this for me proves a little bit more that gravity exists. If it isn't there, it completely disproves for me gravity, and I can say, all right, I'm a flat earther. But I'm neither right now. You know, I neither believe completely what NASA says, and I don't believe what flat earthers say. So I just have to make this experiment and prove it for myself.
What do flat earthers say?
Well, the Earth is flat, for example, which I don't really believe right now.
But I've just said we're not talking about beliefs. We're talking about reality.
Well,
reality, not beliefs. Not what 99% of people believe, not what you believe, not what I believe. Reality.
Well, you can say the Earth is flat, but only because you say it, it isn't automatically a fact. You know?
Well, no, I can look at a picture and go, the Earth is obviously and observably flat.
Ah, okay, pictures, alright. Wait a
Yeah,
moment.
or I can look across a massive body of water and see an island miles and miles away, not obscured by anything.
So, I've seen some picture that also show a little bit a curved horizon. So, I mean a little bit curve at the horizon. Not from NASA, for example. I'm going to search some of those, then I can show you.
Here comes a fisheye lens.
Sorry, so you're going to show me a curved horizon. So presumably this curved horizon would be able to replicate so that as I turn around in 180 degrees, it continues to fall away from me. Or as I turn 90 degrees, will I find that the horizon is still at eye level at 90 degrees? And if I turn 180 degrees, the horizon is still at eye level behind me and to the side of me. Because if you're going to show me a curve, the inference is that that curve continues, as opposed to what happens in reality, which is you turn 90 degrees and you still have the horizon at eye level. So if it curves at the edge of your picture, the inference is that it continues to curve around you, correct?
Wait a moment, you are really, what's it called? Not loud. How's it called? The opposite of loud. Quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Can you
my
repeat
kid's
it?
just fallen
You
asleep.
were really,
So I'm
really quiet.
trying not to wake my kid up. She's literally on me asleep. So she's
okay,
been screaming for about the last, I don't know, hour. And now she's just about to fall asleep. So I'm trying to keep my voice down.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So, yeah, that's thrown me completely off. I've even forgotten what we were talking about. What the hell was the subject?
Wait, I'm going to put the volume a little bit up so I can understand you better.
Yo.
Hey, Anthony.
Oh my god.
Am I interrupting, or can I finish? Can I carry on with that point that I was finishing with?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, my bad. Zinda I actually lost track of the conversation. So what were we talking?
I was just searching some pictures from a little bit higher height that show a little bit of a curve. So I'm still looking for it, but please go on with the conversation.
Okay, so before you even show it, the problem is that at any altitude, as you turn, if you were to take a picture and say, look, the edges are curved, that would imply that if you turn 90 degrees, that curve would continue, but it never does.
Yes, it should. It should, yeah.
It should, but it never does.
Okay. Strange.
Yeah, no, it's just that's how a flat plane works. It never falls away from you. If you're seeing a curved edge, then you'd expect that curve to continue, and you'd expect it to look bally from all aspects. But instead, you look out in every direction, and the horizon meets your eye level.
One side is barely anything, but not.
Wait, I have to. Alright. Never mind. He muted himself.
Who, me?
Did you want me to present you, Anthony?
Yes, please. Are we on?
Not yet. Now you are.
Okay, so before Arwin kicked me for being grumpy, basically for destroying his point, I'm just going to summarise what Arwin's position was with regards to a rock on top of another rock. And I'm going to use a video that's on my channel entitled Gravity Requires a Physical Force to demonstrate it, because it's really easy to demonstrate. We see here liquid mercury. It's got a density value. You can Google it and you can research it yourself and you'll find the same answer that I did. And he fills up a bucket because it's a liquid form. It needs to have a container, you know, a bit like our atmosphere. It needs to have a container to hold it. And all he does is he fills up the container with liquid mercury. And then what he does is he gets the rock. This will be the second rock for Arwen. And obviously, what Arwen's point was that one rock is going to be placing a pressure on the other rock, and that can't be explained by density and buoyancy. So when he puts the rock on top of it, we can see that the density, the absolute density of the two products in this case, we've got mercury and we've got steel, which would be the anvil. And when we get, let's get to the point where I put this. Basically, you can see them out. So the relative density of mercury is 13.56, but the relative density of the steel is only 8.05. Now, I didn't put the units on because it confuses people, because everybody wants them to be kilograms or grams. They had a different unit, but in density, it does have a different unit. But because one's 13.5 and the other one's 8.05, we can tell what's going to happen, right? Even though steel's heavy, we know what's going to happen. So obviously, when he lets go of the steel, it floats. So this is essentially the rock on top of the rock for Arwen. I know that one's liquid and it's not exactly the same, but it's a pictorial way for everybody to understand that one of the rocks is, like in this case, 13. That's its density. And the other rock is still heavy, but it's a little bit smaller, so that sits on top of it. And that's got a density value of 8.5. But both of these items are in the same medium as what the rocks are for Arwen. They're both in air. So it's a good example of how density and buoyancy explains completely what Arwen's asking me to demonstrate, which he then calls a straw man and then loses his temper and kicks me. But it doesn't change the facts. One rock can be 13.5. Other rock can be 8.05. The pressure that's on top of one another is caused by this 8.05, and it's not bigger than this number. So yes, we can explain everything with density and buoyancy. And if anybody's going to assert that there's an extra force, expectation is satisfied by producing evidence to prove that force exists. And Arwen will admit that he can't prove it, but he won't drop the point. So if you're going to assert that there's a secondary force and admit that there's no evidence to support it, Hitchens' razor applies. He who asserts must prove. Hitchens' razor states that assertions submitted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, but Arwen won't let go of it. So here's the big rock. There's the little rock. The big rock's the 13. The little rock's 8. The reason why there is a downward acceleration force in Arwen's words is because of this value is greater than 0, and obviously both of them are in the air. It can't be any simpler. That's all it is. One is bigger than the other. That's it. That's the answer. Density. It's perfectly explained.
Anthony.
Yo. Go on, Travis. You can have.
Did you hear my question to
no, I jumped in the bath.
Arwen, or were you kicked, or did you hear my question to Arwen?
No, you were trying to get it out, and I kept saying no. So go on, ask your question.
My question to Arwen was, okay, take gravity out of the picture. What happens to the rocks?
Nothing.
He said
because
nothing. They do the same thing.
The force is so minute. It's the weakest of the claimed forces. So it would do nothing in this context because the scale in the example is so massive that the difference between gravity would be negligible, even if it did exist. You would have to get the medium that both rocks are sat in, i.e. air, to be very similar to the numbers that are density, the relevant densities, if gravity even existed. And then you might be able to, if you could manipulate the gravity, then you would be able to prove that there is a gravitational force. But the answer in this instance would be 0, and it would always be 0 because there is no gravity. But if you assert that there is a gravity, you've got to show it. And he knows he can't, but he won't let the point drop.
And with that, I'm going to say first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. If you hated the show, then you know exactly what to do. You've probably done it already. But if you like the show, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!